Hi, I'm your host, Michelle Poverman, a former anxious empath turned mostly grounded psychotherapist, intuitive guide, and energy healer, and this is Into the Work. And it isn't just a podcast. It's your actual invitation to break free from old patterns, end the cycle of your self-abandonment, and finally step into the life your soul has been craving. Each episode is a spark to help you rise higher, to help you shine brighter and reclaim the truth of who you really are. The spark has already been lit. And sister, this is a journey from spark to brilliance. So together, let's go ignite a fire. I want to ask you something before we go anywhere, just to start. If I asked you right now, honestly, like really just giving yourself the real answer, do you trust yourself? Not your skills that you've learned from so-and-so, not your credentials, not what you've already built or what other people think of what you do in the world, what you be, how you be, what your work is. Do you trust yourself? Do you trust your knowing? Do you trust your direction when you choose one? Your right to want what you want and to build it without apology. For most women that I know who are building something, and especially those trying to do so soulfully, right? The honest answer is sometimes in moments when things are going well, when somebody shares how much maybe you've made a difference in their life, how much you've impacted them, it feels so good. But when you're not scared, right? When you're not in any type of fear state. Today's episode is about three things. Three forces I believe are non-negotiable for any woman who is building something that actually is going to reflect her truth. And the three things are these. The three things are intuition, ambition, and authority. Not as concepts, we're going to get real here today. Not as aspirational ideals, but really, how are you doing in these areas of growing in your life? So let's go jump in. So this conversation is something I have been thinking about for a while now and watching and collecting information on because I really believe this is just so important, foundational to moving forward in our growth. So let's go jump in. Here's what I've observed. In my clinical work, in my coaching, and honestly in my own life, most women who are building something meaningful are operating with one or two of these three forces firing decently. And it's, I think, more rare or it's pretty incredible when you really come across somebody that is really shooting off and firing from all three at once. And when you start second guessing yourself, it's usually in one of these gaps. And so let me break this down for you so you can understand yourself also in terms of how you're showing up and where your need for the work is, right? And that's what this is all about. Some women have tremendous intuition. They can feel exactly where they're meant to go when it hits, what's aligned, what's off, what doesn't feel right, but they cannot sustain the forward moment. So you have the intuition, it's super strong, you know where you need to go, you're there, but then to actually move it forward is where it gets tricky. Because sometimes this is where we start and stall. And I'm sure so many of you listening are aware of like, oh yeah, I've done that, or I do that. I start and I stall. They get close and then they pull back. The vision is clear, but the fuel keeps running out. And then some women have fierce ambition. Like they're driven. They are disciplined. They are relentless in their effort, but they've lost contact with their knowing. They're building something, but it's starting to feel hollow. Productive, but not purposeful. Make sense? So you see where this is like busy work. And some women, I think this is the most common profile in my world, where they have both the intuition and the ambition, but they can't hold themselves steady in the authority. They know where they're going, they want it deeply, and yet at the threshold of real visibility, real leadership, real this is who I am and what I want to do, they collapse and they shrink. and they over-explain, or, they freak out. And this is where freeze state comes in for sure. They wait for permission that is never going to come from anybody on the outside. And even if it does, even if you get permission from the outside, it is never going to reach your cells, right? Because this is an embodiment that we're talking about. It's not just a thought process. It's an embodiment of how that you hold in order to be in your authority. And so words don't work, and we'll get more into that. But intuition does show you the path, and ambition gives you the fuel. Make sense, right? So intuition shows you the path. That's where you get your hit. Like, this is where I'm getting my knowing from. The ambition gives you the fuel that you need to keep going. And the authority is what lets you actually do the leading and the stepping into from your knowing on your own terms without waiting for the world to tell you that you are ready. All three matter. All three are buildable. Okay. And this conversation is about exactly that, because in any one of these areas where you are struggling, then you can do different. You can do better. You can heal, you can build, you can create, you can change. And that's just such a beautiful thing. And so keep an open mind as we talk about this, and know that whatever it comes from understanding yourself more is only the good stuff. It's only the really good stuff, right? That's what we need. We need the self-awareness in order to make the change, because change only happens in the present moment. So I want to offer you something before we dive into each of these. I want you to pause. I want you to just take a moment, take a breath, and see what the first thing that comes up for you. I'm going to ask you a couple questions. Right now, what you know about yourself, of the three things I've already talked about, which one of these do you feel is your growing edge right now? When I say intuition, when I say that ambition that fuels you and keeps you going and motivated, and then I talk about standing in your authority and owning yourself and your knowing and your ambition, which three of these is your growing edge right now? Just what comes up. Just let it come quick. Now, if it's intuition, I want you to ask, am I having trouble hearing my own knowing or trusting it when I do hear it? Okay, so do you have trouble accessing the knowing, or do you have a hard time actually trusting it? Because a lot of times we're getting those intuitive hits left and right, and we don't even know we're getting them. This great information, but maybe you're not really collecting it, aware enough to acknowledge it, or do you not trust it? When we talk about ambition, do you feel the pull but struggle to sustain the momentum? Or am I secretly afraid of what it means to want this much? Maybe there's something about wanting this thing that feels a little too out of reach. I just want you to take a moment to just recognize if you struggle with ambition. Does any of that make sense for you? And then if you notice that you're thinking authority is really going to be your edge, I want you to ask yourself, do I know where I'm going and want it deeply, but keep collapsing when I get to the threshold of actually stepping into being fully seen, heard, and known, and getting out there to make an impact, or whatever it is that you're putting yourself out there, whatever it is that you do. And I want you just to take a moment with that. What rings true for you? There's no wrong answer. There's only your honesty. And that answer is going to tell you exactly where your next level of work lives. So hold it as we go through this together. And because everything I'm about to say is going to land differently depending on which one you just named, but just remain open. So I want to start with a word that I think carries more weight for women than we usually admit. I want you to say ambition out loud for a moment. Just go ahead and say the word ambition. Now I want you to say, I am ambitious, right? I love my ambition. I just want you to notice what happens in your body when you say it. Notice if there's any resistance to it. Notice what associations arise when you say, yeah, I'm a very ambitious woman. Notice if there's any part of you that tightens, starts to qualify it oh, well, I mean this or that, right? Or immediately wants to soften it. Because for many women, especially empaths, relational, purpose-driven women, ambition is a complicated word. It can feel at odds with being caring or being collaborative or with being someone people trust and turn to. Because if you're ambitious, then you don't really care or something like that, right? There's something underneath it that's cold. And we have been taught explicitly and implicitly from a very young age that wanting too much is dangerous, that it's selfish, that being too visible invites criticism, so it's scary, that leading too confidently makes you difficult, right? And so the putting your own vision at the center of your life, especially if you're a mom, if you have all this other stuff, if you put a vision in the center where it's front and center and it's important to you, somehow it's in conflict with being a good woman, a good mother, a good friend, a good human. Ambition in women has been rebranded as a character flaw like over many years, right? So for so long, many of us have internalized this critique in our consciousness. So we shrink, we disguise it, or we call it a passion for service, right? This is the one thing I see all the time. And I get it. Like I've been there, I've done this, but we need to code everything that comes out of our mouths when it comes to our ambition as a passion for service, a desire to help, a calling to contribute. And all of it's true, right? All of it's true. You wouldn't be a listener of mine if those things weren't true, because they're just part of your alignment, what's right and what's wrong, right? What fuels you, what doesn't. However, sometimes we use those beautiful framings to avoid owning the simpler, more direct truth underneath it. And that's, I want to build something significant. I want to be seen for what I'm capable of. I want a business that reflects the depth of who I am, and I want to lead. There is nothing wrong with that. There is nothing selfish or arrogant or unfeminine about it. It is legitimate soul-level desire. It's soul-level work, and it's why you're here. You're coded for this, and not all of us are. And so we are here to be the fullest expression of ourselves as possible. And you are not fully expressing yourself if you're not stepping into your ambition and what that means for you. And it's okay if that ambition is only just turning on now, maybe even in this episode, right? And that's fine. There's no prescription or rule of how this is supposed to go. You are like the bud becomes the flower and dies and rebirths over and over again. And you are literally the seed that just keeps sprouting. And here we are. You are just about to head into another phase of life because it's a new day tomorrow, right? And I want you to step into really owning and being okay with that having ambition, having a calling, as much as it is in alignment with a passion for service or like really wanting to help, because literally, I mean, that's in my DNA. Like I can't help myself but want to help. That's who I am, and it's who you are too, probably. But it does not have to be a qualifier. Okay? I just want you to let that land. So let's talk about what ambition actually is. So here's the reframe I want to offer you. Ambition is not ego. Ambition is not greed. Ambition is not the opposite of humility or service or spiritual alignment. Okay? Ambition is the energy of becoming. It is the fuel that converts a vision into a reality. It is what keeps you building on the days when no one or nothing feels certain. When no one's watching, when the gap between where you are right now and where you're going feels impossibly wide. The only way we get there is through our ambition. It is the fuel that we need, the energy of becoming. And I love that so much. Like I literally, just even saying it to you right now, I can feel pins and needles all over my body because this is like a download, because it's so important for you to hear that your becoming is so important in this life. And your ambition, that energy that it is, it's such a gift. It's just a gift. We're so lucky to have it. And without ambition, like intuition is just a beautiful dream. Ambition is what makes it real. It's the fuel that makes us move. And I want to say this in a different way. Your ambition does not need to be justified by how many people it helps. It does not need to be proportional to your selflessness. It does not need to be earned. You are allowed to want what you want simply because it calls you. That is enough. That is the game of life. That is what you're here to do. Now, for the women in my world who are a little more psychologically or emotionally sophisticated, you understand emotions in other people, you're spiritually attuned, you're deeply feeling, there is often an additional layer of complexity around ambition because you can feel everyone's response to you. You know what I'm saying? Like, you notice when someone is uncomfortable with your visibility, when somebody is judging it, you sense and feel and pick up the stupidest stuff, right? Like, oh my God. And it's not stupid, but it's like, is that really helpful? Right? So honestly, you notice when someone is uncomfortable with you. You notice the subtle withdrawal when you take up more space than people expected, right? And your nervous system, it's trained to read the room and keep the peace. And it will sometimes interpret that discomfort as a signal to pull back. You'll notice when somebody who's a little threatened, maybe someone in your family or it's anybody out in the world, like they're a little threatened by you. And you feel that signal because your programming says, oops, I just stepped in it. I just did something wrong. And so you want to pull back. And then actually it becomes more of something that's preparatory. So you want to avoid that. So that's why you shrink and stay small, because I don't want to actually step into that. I want to say this, your sensitivity is one of the greatest gifts, but it also can be recruited by fear. So your sensitivity can be hijacked. The antidote is not to become less sensitive. Okay, that's just like ridiculous because this is who you are. This is your gifts of being here right now. And it is to become more grounded in your own authority, grounded enough that someone else's discomfort with your growth does not become your instruction manual. It does not dictate which direction you go or what decision you make or how you show up in your business, in your world, in your work, in your life. But before we get there, I also want to address something that sits right in the middle of ambition that almost no one talks about. There is a particular pattern that I see in women who are genuinely ambitious, who have done the work to own their desire, right? Who know what they're building and why, like they're so locked in, that I want to name this very specifically, and it's the start-stop cycle. She's moving, or you're moving, you're building, you're in it, you're locked in. And then sometimes something happens, an event that doesn't fill. Right? Something you put out there fails, it bombs. A launch that underperforms, or a pitch that goes unanswered, or a piece of content that lands in silence. And then you stop, right? Like all these things are happening and they feel like these little roadblocks, or actually they are roadblocks, but you're taking them as signals to stop, that it's not safe. You're not supposed to be doing this. And you don't stop because you're not good enough, you're lazy, or you're not have enough energy for this, or backbone or spine. It's not because you don't want it anymore. It's because something in your system interprets that moment as a threat. And that's when the freeze response moves in. And so I know I talk about this periodically on this podcast because it is so foundational to, I think, the idea of building something for yourself. A perceived failure doesn't feel like disappointment to your nervous system. It feels like danger. It's like exposure, like confirmation of the fear you've been carrying quietly all along. And oh my God, it's happening. This is exactly why I shouldn't have believed in myself. This is ridiculous, right? Like the first thing that happens just blows it up. And because you're empathic and self-aware, you don't necessarily just feel the freeze, you build a story around it. You create a narrative of the event, and you turn it into what you call evidence, right? Evidence that you were wrong to want this, that people don't want what you have to offer, that maybe you were just fooling yourself all along. You maybe feel embarrassed or you feel shame. It becomes this like huge thing and it becomes an obstacle. It's bigger, it's heavier, and it's far harder to move through than whatever actually happened. Your story is the problem. And here's what I want you to hold on to, is that there is a difference between a freeze and a stop. A freeze is psychological. It is your nervous system doing exactly what it was designed to do when it perceives a threat. It's not weakness. It's not a sign that you don't want it enough. It is your system's doing its job to protect you, just with outdated information. Operating as if the stakes of this moment are life and death. When really what happened is that 12 people didn't sign up for your event, or something happened that you're trying to build something and it didn't work. A stop is a decision. Very different than freezing. So stopping is a decision you make. And the work and the real work is learning to recognize the freeze before it becomes a story, before the story becomes a decision, right? Because the decision is the stopping. But the freezing is everything else. So before the decision becomes weeks or months of not moving, we want you to recognize, or I want to help you recognize, the freeze. So you're not stalled, right? You didn't freeze up because your ambition isn't there and you just don't have it. You're stalled because your nervous system needs something before it can move again. And once you know that, you can give it what it needs. So I wanted to give you just 3 really quick bite-sized ways to look at restoring your ambition after you've had a freeze up, because so many of you we're all going to find this. It's like hard work putting yourself out there. Really, it's like building a business will actually literally mirror everything about yourself you're afraid of. It's incredible. So the first step I want you to take is to separate the event from the evidence. Okay. So the thing that happened that triggered you, it is not a verdict. The freeze wants to make it a verdict. It wants to say, this is proof you can't do this, that people don't want what you have to offer. You were reaching too far. This is ridiculous. All of that, your job is to interrupt that translation before it completes. You cannot let the story complete itself and turn into exactly what dictates your next move, right? I want you to ask yourself, what would you tell a friend, a client, someone you loved, who came to you with this exact result, that they tried something and it didn't work? Because you would not tell her it was over. You would help her look at the data clearly. You would help her say, well, what did work and what didn't, and what to adjust and what would keep her moving, right? You deserve the same counsel internally that you would give her. And I want you to apply it to yourself with the same compassion and the same rigor. I want you to become an information collector, not someone who freezes up emotionally because you get dysregulated, because it feels like it's some core wound inside that's being called out and that everybody can see, right? You're not enough, you're not good enough, you're not worthy, or you're not lovable or something. And so we want to make sure that you are stopping that in its tracks. And I always love cancel, delete. If you know me at all, I'm telling you that left and right. Cancel, delete, cancel, delete. As soon as you catch yourself in the moment, cancel, delete, my bad, my mistake. So number 2. Okay, number 1 is really separating the event from the evidence. Number 2, I want you to look at shrinking the next action that you take until your system can handle it, can deal, right? Can say yes. So when you're in freeze, the vision feels, everything is impossibly large. So the gap between where you are and where you're going just feels unbridgeable. And the temptation is to either force yourself through willpower, which rarely works and always leads to burnout, or to wait until you feel ready, which may never come. And I know there's a lot of people out there just waiting until they're ready. And I get that one big time. I totally understand it. However, the antidote is not motivation. It's actually how tiny a step you can take, you can create. It is not shrinking your vision, but shrinking the next action until it is so ridiculously small, so contained, so undeniably doable, that your nervous system can be like, okay, I can do that without triggering another freeze. You can't take a big step next. You have to take one small thing, like one small email, one voice note to somebody, one piece of content or something that you put together, something that feels, whatever it is that you're trying to do in the world, something that feels that it's doable, whatever that is. And if you're listening and you're like, I'm in this place, I want you to really today decide what is the one thing that I can do that's a step forward. And then you're going to decide what the second thing you're going to do is. Because each tiny, tiny little step starts to unlock your energy again. And again, ambition is energy. So you're going to just allow that process by tiny steps, tiny, tiny things that do not feel scary. Because honestly, forward motion at any scale interrupts the freeze. That is the best way out of freeze is action. It is the best way out of getting unstuck is an action step. So do what you can do that will happen. And it begins to restore that sense of felt self in the body, not just the mind. And I think it's really important for us to make it safe for ourselves to be where we're at, but not in a way that keeps it so that we never really take another action step, right? So the third is to return to who you are, not just why you're doing this. Most people will tell you when the motivation dips, and I say this all the time, reconnect with your why, because it's not wrong. It's so important. You really need to understand what your why is. You really need to understand and feel connected to why you're doing this to help you keep going. But when we are in like a particularly solid freeze state, purpose alone is sometimes can be difficult to really move us forward. I think that purpose does kind of live in the mind and freeze lives in the body. And so it's kind of a body problem. So instead of asking, let me think about why, I want you to feel why. Who am I when I fully am in this? And not just as a visualization exercise, but as a somatic kind of reality thing, right? So feel the version of yourself, the one who is building and creating and feeling fully alive in what she's doing. What does she feel like in her body? Where do you feel her? What is her quality of presence? Like, how does she show up and how does she feel when she's doing it? So I want to talk about authority. Authority is a word I use carefully because it can be misunderstood. Most people, when they hear authority, they think bold, commanding presence. When you think of authority, they think of confidence, and all of those are true. The kind of woman who walks in a room and immediately owns it, and it can be expressed by authority. They tell people what to do. They delegate. You have different perceptions of what authority means in however you've been programmed, whatever you've learned. But that's not all of what authority is. Authority is the capacity to trust your own knowing, even when the evidence hasn't arrived yet. So it is what lets you hold the new identity while everything around you is still organizing or reorganizing, right? It allows you to know and trust yourself, and you hold that energy. That's authority. And authority is not something that you are given. I mean, it is not, something you get from a credential, or it's not something you get because you have a bunch of followers, or, you reach some revenue milestone at work, or you have someone else validate you repeatedly. I mean, honestly, it's really built incrementally in the smallest moments of choosing yourself anyway. And every time you don't shrink when someone questions you, or every time you don't over-explain yourself or your vision to make it more palatable for other people, every time you stay in the room, even when part of you wants to disappear, every time you make the offer, you publish the post, you send the email, you do the things you've been rehearsing in your head for weeks, because, I do that, I'm not gonna lie. This is authority being forged. This is like not in grand gestures, but it's like these accumulations of small things consistently acting in self-trust. That's how we hold boundaries in the world. It's through our authority, through our self-trust. It's how we create in the world. It's holding power, your own power, not power over other people, but personal power. And I do want to name that at the root of a lot of the struggle I see in women who are building visible work in the world is there's a version of showing up that really requires you to perform. And it is curated, it's managed, it's controlled. And I feel like I always say, those of you that have any performer in you have a leading edge, right? Like you can get out there and you can do something in front of other people, and it's, in a sense, it's sort of curated. And it asks, how do I need to appear in order to be taken seriously? In order to be liked, in order to not be criticized even. And there is a version that is authority, and it asks something completely different than performance. It asks, what is true for me right now? And do I have the capacity to say it? Performance is kind of exhausting because you're always managing the gap between who you are and who you're presenting to the world. And authority is sustainable because there is no gap to manage. Right? So that is why the inner work is not separate from the business work. It's not something you do before the real work begins. It is the work. The ceiling on your work, your business, your whatever it is you're creating in life will always be the ceiling on your own sense of self. As far as you can go within is how far you can really go outside of yourself without somehow collapsing it all. And the capacity to be visible, to charge what you're worth, to lead people through transformations, or to hold a room, to help heal, to do whatever you do, all of it rests on the foundation of who you believe yourself to be when no one's watching. And embodying authority, I mean, that's a serious practice. I mean, honestly, it's a practice. So what does it actually look like to inhabit this? Not perform it, but actually inhabit it. It looks like speaking about your work without apology or overqualification. We kind of said that, but it looks like being willing to disagree with the dominant narrative in your space when you know something different is true. Like something doesn't feel right, you are willing to stand in your knowing. It looks like setting the terms of your work around your actual values, what you really want for yourself, the life you want to have, not around what everybody thinks you should do. So it feels like groundedness in the body rather than performance in the mind, like making decisions from your center rather than from your fear. I think that makes sense, right? Like trusting that the woman you are becoming is more than adequate for what she's being called to do. Even when she doesn't have all the answers yet, you may not have all the answers yet. Like you really may not. And I'm going to encourage you to step out and hold the energy of trusting yourself anyway, because you wouldn't want it if it wasn't aligned for you. And I think sometimes holding authority asks us to channel, to trust and to channel the wisdom in our body, channel the wisdom that we just know, what we know to be true, and to just trust and be open to let stuff come through us some of the times. I mean, sometimes, yes, it's of my mind, and sometimes, it's just coming through. Like right now, as I'm talking to you, this is what's coming through to me. And so or to you, right? And so I want to welcome you to open yourself up that way. A lot of times before I go and do anything that will require authority, even in this podcast, before I even did this today, I stop, I put my hands over my heart, I open myself up to be a conduit, a vessel. I ask for the information to flow through as easily as possible. I set certain questions that I ask myself, or I put out there the intention of what it is, how I can be of service and how I can be best, be grounded and protected too sometimes. And hey, listen, right? Authority is not the absence of doubt. I still doubt myself sometimes. It is the decision to move forward anyway. And that is like the dance. It is like, can you hold doubt and do it anyway? And some doubt, because there's some of you that are like, we got a perfectionism, right? And so when perfectionism comes out, it's like, well, that doubt is, letting me know it's not good enough yet. Or like, I don't want to put something out there that's subpar. I want to do my due diligence, and that's when we get into the procrastinating. We spend all our time researching. There is room for that. There is room in this process to say, I'm not quite ready yet. However, because we get so stuck there, I really am encouraging you to trust your process, but also hold room that doubt is sometimes just signaling freeze response, right? It's just your protective mode. There's a part of you that's doubting, and there's a part of you that's not doubting. There's a part of you that says, I don't know, right? It doesn't feel good about this. And then there's a part of you that's like, hell yeah, I can do this. This is really beautiful. I can do this. And so I really want you to just not let one outshadow the other. Well, I don't want you to let doubt outshadow, the part of you that knows. The authority that we're talking about, it is the decision to move forward anyway. It really is. It's rooted in your own knowing before the proof arrives, as we said. So when you look at all three together, let's just talk about how powerful this is, okay? So when intuition, ambition, and authority are working in alignment, this is what it looks like, okay? Intuition surfaces the direction. You get a hit, you get a ping, it starts to embody itself within you. It shows up repeatedly. It shows you what's next. It speaks in the quiet, persistent language of knowing. Ambition converts that knowing into action. And it is the energy that keeps you building when the process is slow and unglamorous and uncertain. It is what gets you back at your desk after a hard week. It is what refuses to let the vision die quietly. And authority holds the whole thing. It's the container. It's the spine. It's the capacity to stay true to your path, even when the external world hasn't caught up yet. And even when the results are still a little invisible, even when someone you love doesn't understand why you're building it, if you've got a partner that's like, this doesn't make sense, I don't know if this is going to work, you've got pressure anywhere, you don't have to earn the right to lead. You have to develop the capacity to trust yourself as a leader. And that is the work. And it is always an inside job. In fact, in 2021, I created an entire online program. I had learned how to do courses. I had bought into it. I had all this education. I had been learning so much in the background of business, and I built a program. I never launched it. It freaked me out. I started putting it together. I started talking about it. I even went on someone's podcast and talked about it, and then I never launched it because it totally just freaked me out. I didn't feel like it was good enough. Every time I went to go do it, it wasn't good enough. And so I literally froze and did not do a thing again for I think it was 2 years. And then I turned that program into an in-person program because that's where my comfort zone was. I decided I'm going to take this boundary class for empaths that I created, and I'm going to go ahead and do it in person. And then I had great results in person, and people were fantastic, and it was a wonderful journey. And then I decided to make it the online version, the Modern Empaths Boundary Mastery, which is a course and group coaching container that I created and did. And so I totally froze up. And when I tell you the freeze was it was like the ice age, you know what I mean? I couldn't go back. And every time I did, I was spinning my wheels and creating things that never turned into anything and creating lead magnets that never actually really went anywhere. And I didn't have the direction or the clarity. And when I did, though, when I finally made my way back, I've really started working on these three things: following my intuition, landing that ambition, truly plugging in. I need to think there's two plugs in the wall. One is all the energy you need to build your life, which is ambition. And the other plug is fear. And you get to decide which one you're going to put in the wall. Where are you going to put it? Which outlet are you going to use? And I really got better and better and better at saying, I'm not plugging into this fear. I'm taking it out and I'm plugging into ambition. And it's made a world of difference for me and really allowed me the space and the capacity also in the process of healing that I've done, and in going out and doing the work actually helped build my authority. Really going out and doing it and showing up actually was like, hell yeah, this is who I am. I'm literally going out in the world and being who I am. That is the most precious thing you can possibly do, and what a freaking gift it is that I get to go do that. So All right. So I am so grateful for you. This has been about really what it takes for you to say yes to the version of yourself that your soul has already committed to. I want you to imagine like you've made this soul agreement, before you even came down here. And to stay with that yes long enough for it to become real, it requires those three things, right? The intuition to hear the call, the ambition to answer it, and the authority to hold yourself steady through everything the answer asks of you. So none of these things are given to you. All of them are built. I did not have them either. And I built them. And the building is the work. And the most important work that you could possibly do. It is not just for your business, but for your life. How we do one thing is how we do everything, folks, right? Like how we do one thing is how we do everything. And if you build these things, it's going to start showing up in your relationships, in your other areas of your life, and showing up for yourself. I hope something in this episode landed for you, and I hope you feel a little more seen or grounded or something, a little more willing to trust the pull, even when it's uncomfortable. Thank you for being a part of my world here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for doing this work. The world is a better place with you in it and with you showing up. And I am so honored to be a part of your process. So have a beautiful day. Until next time, I will see you next week. Bye for now. Thank you for joining me on Into the Work, Therapy for Empaths and Seekers. If this episode spoke to you, please follow the podcast and leave a review. It is the best way to spread this healing work to other women. Your presence here matters. Step into your power, heal your soul, and rise with women who are doing the same. Keep joining us every week, and together we can heal the world. If you're ready to dive deeper, grab your free Shadow Work Transformation Bundle in the show notes, and I will look forward to seeing you next week.